Hey, all you Matthew studying peeps. We have, there's a little glare there on my glasses, sorry. We have the most amazing lesson, feeding the 5,000. Every time there's some stories that are just the best. Lazarus being raised from the dead, the 5,000, and man, I love that verse where Mark asked Jesus, Master, don't you care if we perish? I can't even think about that without choking up. Yes, he cares. And this one today, feeding the 5,000, man, it's awesome. Let me get my notes. What did I do with them? All right. If I can't find my notes, I'll have to wing it. Well, okay, let's wing it. I mean, here we have 5,000 people going to be fed. That's 5,000 men. So they probably had a wife. So it might have been about 10,000. And they might have had one or two kids apiece. So there could have been a possible somewhere between 15 and 20,000 people. But what happens? Little boy brings his 5 loaves and 2 fishes. This is bugging me. Let me pause this. Pause. How do you pause? Because I made some additional notes. I tell you what, we were at church tonight. So I did this yesterday. I studied for this yesterday. And then tonight at church, we had this lesson. I thought, number one, what's God trying to tell me? He's telling me this twice in 1 week. I don't care. Let him tell me. I think he's wanting me to tell me. I'm sorry, I'm on a boo tonight. When things are hopeless, you give me what you have, and I will take care of it. Isn't that just the best lesson ever? So, we're going to think about this. And it's the only miracle that's told in all 4 Gospels. And we're just going to jump right in. The situation seems hopeless. They've got like 15 to 20,000 people to feed. They're hungry. And Jesus had gone to get alone with God. And yet Luke tells a good aspect of this. He pulled away from the crowd. Remember, Jesus had sent his disciples out to minister. And now they were back. And they had just come back. So they go to Bethsaida. And to have time alone. And he wants to minister to his disciples. But what shows up? 20,000 people. I mean, that's a huge crowd. And yet, he had compassion on them, okay? The crowd came in, and plans had to change. So, sometimes, I think our time needs to be God's time. And on God's plans, our life should be about who God puts in our paths to minister, not what we're wanting to do. So now, that's my first point. And then that's when people are a bother. The next point is accepting the challenge. So in verse 15, he does not send them away. He tells his disciples, you give them something to eat. Well, Jesus knew when he said this, what was going to happen. So he didn't know we don't know how many there was in total, but they stated to Jesus, the disciples, and was, we cannot. Jesus was trying to get them to accept a challenge of trusting him to provide. If that don't bless you up one side and down the other, I don't know what to say. Jesus wants us to accept a challenge. He's going to provide. We got to learn to trust him. That's the ultimate goal here. We have a challenge to accept that I cannot, but God can. We need to have faith in Jesus. He wanted the disciples to get their eyes upon him. And what does Mark 10:27 say? With men it is impossible, but not with God, for with God all things are possible. So let's just think about this a minute. In verse 9, Andrew, he says, look, here we don't have enough. We don't have enough money, even the money they had. So I did a little research, and with the help of my pastor tonight, who did even more research, that would have been a half a year's wages. That still wouldn't have been enough to feed these people. But this little boy brings up his barley loaves. Now, when you and I think of a loaf of bread, what do you think of? A loaf of bread, a huge loaf of bread, like, 16, 18 inches long, butter loaf or some of that French bread. No, in that day, a barley loaf was only for the poor because barley was the cheapest of bread making means. And so only the poor used barley. So this little boy was poor. And the loaves in that day, get this, were the size of a biscuit or a muffin. And his 2 fishes probably were the size of sardines. Think about that. So here's this poor little boy. And he didn't say, oh, they're going to make fun of me if I bring this up. If I say, hey, I'll share this with 15,000 people. No, he says, here, you can have my 5 biscuits and my 2 sardines. And then what do they end up with? 12 baskets, of course. Now, and I'm not trying to put anything in the Bible that's not there. I don't believe in doing that. But I want you, why 12 baskets? Well, there were 12 disciples, and they all had families. I think most of them did. And they were all poor men. They were just fishermen. So you think about it. Each one of them now had a basket to feed themselves and their family. And I don't know that, but I'm just thinking how wonderful God is and how he supplies our needs. Okay, let's go on a little bit. Well, I can't get my... There it is. Okay, and then the next point I want to bring up is giving God my lack. What we lack. When we have nothing. When everything seems hopeless. I'm sorry, guys. This is hitting home. I'm not sorry, but... I needed this. I don't know if you guys do, but I needed this. I needed to hear that when things are hopeless and when I haven't got anything, God can still use us. He still needs us, and he wants a willing heart. And so if you look in verses 17 through 21, the 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, their lack was not enough fish and bread. They lacked sufficient means to feed these people that were hungry. They ended up with 12 baskets. Jesus exposed their lack. For us to see the power of God, we must see our own personal lack, where we lack an inability, and then bring it to Jesus. And of course, what does 2 Corinthians 12:9 say? My grace is sufficient for thee. My strength is made perfect in weakness. Man, I love this. This is good stuff. I'm just blubbering tonight. So I want to say one other thing. This little boy was willing. What he had was not good enough in his hands. But when he put it in God's hands, it was plenty. It was enough. I mean, can you not just get into this story? And I just want to meditate on it. I just want to think about how the things I have in my life that I can't control and how much I would like to control them, but you can't. And I just need to trust God. I'm just going to have to trust God about these things. I love Jesus. And I know you guys do too. Let's have a good week. And I just praise God. Whatever you have, even if it's 5 little biscuits and 2 sardines, bring it to Jesus. And he'll make, he'll feed a multitude with it. Just say, I'm willing, Lord. See y'all next week.